All right. Well, hi, everyone. So excited to have you joining us tonight. Some of you have traveled with us before, some of you have not. We have been doing travel since 2016, I think is when I went to China. Since then, we've been in Spain, Italy, which was Rome and the Amalfi Coast, Scotland, and we took a COVID break. And then last year we brought back with Portugal. Pretty much except for the very first one, we have traveled with our friends at AAA and Colette, or known as Member Choice Vacations in this setting. So Mitch is here from Member Choice Vacations. He's going to kind of run through what the trip involves. He can answer specific questions. Jamie is with our local AAA office. So she'll be the one you'll actually work with if you choose to go and book, and questions about kind of once we get past tonight, you'll primarily work with Jamie. Of course, you can always call us at the chamber, though I'll probably just call Jamie. So and really our philosophy, we've had anywhere from I think 6 up to close to 18 on our trips. We will book in with a larger group, so there'll be folks from all over the country usually that are with us. One of the reasons that I've always chosen to travel with these guys is I think they have one of the most well-rounded packages for a very reasonable cost. So, you're staying in hotels that are good hotels. They're generally centrally located. Most of your experiences are in the trip already. I've done some in a past life with other operators where, you had a lot of optionals that you had to add on. So that of course ends up adding to the price of it because once you're over there, you want to do everything. So I think these guys have the best value for what they're offering. So definitely I'll hand things over to Mitch. Jamie, anything you want to add to begin with? All right.
Y'all have my business card.
Yeah. And we are recording, so I don't know how much the microphone will pick up or anything like that, but if you have friends or other folks that couldn't be here tonight, or you yourself want to see it, just let me know. I'll probably send the recording out to everyone, just so you have it. So, all right, with that, Mitch, back.
All right, how's everyone doing? Good. All right, well, thank you for giving up a 70 and sunny evening to be here tonight with us. Are we able to hit the front lights by any chance to make it a little easier to the folks in the back? So before I get rolling, I want to thank first and foremost Jamie from AAA and Jody from the Chamber and all their hard work and efforts to help make this trip a possibility for us, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't all be here tonight to learn about this amazing bucket list trip. So let's give them a round of applause.
Woo! Really, I just had to pick it.
Somebody has to do it.
Right.
So my name is Mitchell Mack. All of you can just call me Mitch for short. I'll be steering the ship here this afternoon. I'm the local business development manager with Colette/Member Choice Vacations. I am locally in Ohio. I live in Streetsboro. Brownie points for anyone that's heard of Streetsboro. I always just say Hudson area, especially the further south that I get. But I've been with the company coming up on 8 years now. It's been a fantastic experience because just like all of you are, I'm sure, I'm a traveler at heart. I love to travel. I just happen to work for a travel company. And truly, out of all the destinations that I've been to, everyone always asks, Mitch, what's your favorite place that you've been to? I'm like, I give the corny, the next one. If I really had to pick a country in terms of my favorites, I would say Italy for sure. I mean, there's countries that, this country offers something for someone, this country offers something for someone, but it's so hard to find a destination like Italy that offers a little bit of something for everyone. So I'm excited to talk about our spotlight on Tuscany. But before we get into it, how many people in here have traveled with the Chamber before? Any recurring travel? Okay, a couple of folks. How many folks have had the chance to travel since the pandemic? Ooh, okay, so a little over half the room. So I'm sure everyone's interested in, what the travel landscape looks like nowadays. I always like to share some of my most recent trips and then some of the trips that are kind of pertinent to the area that we're going to be talking about. So I have had the opportunity to visit Italy 3 separate times. shared a couple of the photos on the left. I had a little bit more hair back in those days. That was pre-pandemic. Bottom left is standing on the Rialto Bridge on the shores of Venice, and then the top left is a little town that we visited in Tuscany called Sestre Levante. And then the two pictures on the right were the most recent. That was in November and December. I'll give you 3 guesses where the picture on the left was taken. And I don't know. It wasn't in front of the Eiffel Tower at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. It was authentic Paris, France, and then the trip on the right was my most recent one over the pond. That was to Spain. I'm in front of a little small church called La Sagrada Familia. Yeah, one of Gaudi's masterpieces. And I am happy to say that travel is back, and it's back in a big way. We've had to go through a lot of, hurdles, bumps in the road when it comes to bringing travel back, but I can truly say that, it is business as usual. No more COVID restrictions, no more testing to get back into the United States. That was a fun one for a little bit that, you test to get back in, and if you test negative, you're stranded in the destination. It's not the good kind of stranded. You are confined to a hotel room, essentially. So travel, the industry as a whole, has made a big step forward, which we're very excited about. So I'm going to talk about briefly the kind of product, and Jody did a good job of giving you a high level view of what kind of product do we offer. It's a guided tour. So whenever I say guided tour, I like to describe it as thoughtless travel, because when we get up in the morning, we don't have to think about, all right, what are we going to see? What are we going to do? How are we going to get there? I find that whenever it comes to experiencing a destination independently compared to doing something guided, it's almost like you see the destination in color when you're doing it guided. Yes, you have a little bit more control over your schedule whenever you're doing it independently, but until you've actually been to a destination, you don't know what you don't know. You can go on Google, the way that the world is nowadays, do all the research in the world, but until you're actually put in the situation, in the destination, it makes you appreciate having that guided aspect, having a full-time tour manager that knows these areas inside and out and can bring the destination to life. And no, I'm not your tour manager, so you'll be meeting with a local tour manager in the destination. A lot of them are born, raised, in this case, are from Italy, so they speak the language, they know these destinations inside and out. And they're such a useful tool to lean on during some of your free time, because we do like to give you a good balance of touring and sightseeing, but we don't want to overwhelm you where you went and you're like, well, yeah, we saw a ton, but I need about 4 days of sleep to catch up on all the madness that took place. We give you the meat and potatoes, all the essential must-sees, and then we give you a good amount of free time where you can get away from the group, do your own thing. The thing that I really like about this tour is that it's one hotel. So if there's any cruisers in the room tonight, this is a perfect little transition into an actual land tour, because you unpack once and then you hub and spoke out. So the town that we're staying in is this little spa resort town called Montecatini Terme, right in the heart of Tuscany, very strategically located. So we don't have a ton of travel time on the motor coach getting to and from these cities. The hotel that we use, if everyone opens up to the first page, left-hand side, there's a section in bold called Itinerary at a Glance. So one hotel that we use, and that's going to be the property that we're going to be in for the entirety of the trip. So no, making payments, making final payments, and then you find out 60 days prior, oh, we're staying in a Motel 6 somewhere out in the boondocks. It's a selling feature for us. We want you to know exactly where you're going to be staying. We chose this trip this time of the year. One, we hope that Jody can come along with us. It was a destination that she was very interested in, and a time of the year that she could actually travel. I think we all know her busy schedules, especially recently. So we figured, hey, what better trip, before Christmas, the rest of the holiday madness rolls around, than to take a nice little hiatus to Tuscany. I could certainly think of worse locations to spend about 10 days. It's a great itinerary. I'll get into it. I'll cover the full, meat and potatoes, what we're going to be seeing, what we're going to be doing. But I can say, in terms of Italy, as a destination, it is more of a warmer weather destination. So just because we're traveling at the end of November, doesn't mean that we're going to be getting frigid cold temperatures like we might start to be seeing here in Ohio. Average temperatures anywhere from mid 50s up into the 60s. So sweater weather, basically, for us here locally. And I do want to talk about, just real quick, and then we'll get into the tour, our partnership with AAA. So if anyone in here is a AAA member, because of the partnership that we have with AAA on a national level, AAA members get an additional $50 savings on this tour. And Jamie, you might be able to talk about the membership right now. If somebody isn't necessarily a AAA member, what's a membership running nowadays? It might be worth it just to pick up a membership and then have a chance to save $50 per person on tour.
$77.
77, so
at the basic level.
Yep, exactly. So $27 extra, and you get a AAA membership essentially when you combine it with the discount. So I won't waste any more time. Let's get into it. We can all raise our seat backs, tray tables to their upright positions as we make our way over to truly an amazing, amazing area. What that is, Tuscany. So a quick look at the tour at a glance. I'm not going to go too in depth with this mapping here. This map is also on the right-hand side, just a little bit smaller. Like I said, we do 7 nights in Montecatini Terme, and then you're branching off doing various day trips, but you're always coming back to the same hotel. So we're doing Lucca, Pisa, San Gimignano, Borgo a Maggiano, Florence, and then we also have 2 different extensions. If you want to go in early, you've got the ability to extend into Rome before the tour actually starts. If you want to stay later, we've got the 2-night extension post-tour into the Bologna region. So we're going to open up in Montecatini. This is a little town that's nestled right in the heart of the rolling hills. So the second that you start to get in, you get that true Tuscan feel. You see those rolling hills, the vineyards, the little villas that dot the landscape. And it is very much a medieval town as well. So tons and tons of history. The longest drive that we're basically doing is about an hour and a half on this trip. So not a ton of time on the motor coach. Now, on that first day, we don't have anything really planned. We get you in there, it's a travel day. Like Jody said, we're on a bus that holds 44 people. So we've got 18 seats that are held specifically for our group here, which means that we're going to have people coming from all different places meeting us on that first day. So we don't have any touring planned. We don't want to run you ragged on that first day. The only thing that we have is the welcome dinner. So this is that first night when we have the whole group together. We can be introduced to that amazing Italian food scene. And we're going to have some incredible dinners included throughout the course of this trip. Regional foods, regional wines paired with the dinners. And what I found in Italy especially is sometimes the wine flows a little bit freer than the water, so to speak. So we always say with our tours, first glass of wine or beer is included. I find with Italy, especially if they had a good harvest season, first bottle of wine, or a lot of times it's even endless wine with your dinners. So we just always keep our fingers crossed for those fun nights. So we'll be introduced to the amazing culinary scene that Italy has to offer before we really start our touring and sightseeing on the next day. So the next morning we'll set out for Lucca, which is considered to be one of Tuscany's, quote unquote, best kept secrets. It's got these beautiful Renaissance walls that surround the city, these Romanesque churches, medieval streets, flanked by these beautiful, beautiful towers and amazing city squares. And the setting of Lucca is just absolutely iconic. And if you're looking for history, you're hearing a lot of medieval. The history of the city dates back to about 180 BC. So we're talking a couple thousand years of history. And it is very much a walled city. So back in the day, the walled city, obviously it was strategic. It was for military purposes. Now they've repurposed it into this beautiful promenade that stretches around the exterior of the city, and they've completely revamped it. And so during some of the free time after we do our touring and sightseeing, our orientation tour of the city, it's a great place to just do a little bit of walking. Maybe if you're a little bit more active and adventurous, you might want to rent a bike because you can bike the entire exterior of the city walls. I did actually have a chance to do it. It was amazing. It gives you a different perspective of the city and the surrounding area. And then we give you free time in Lucca to explore a little bit on your own speed. So it's a great place to, grab a bite to eat for lunch. Maybe if you're a churchgoer, you might be out of luck, actually. The city is nicknamed the city of 100 churches because there's literally a church on just about every single street corner. But tons of, these little piazzas, cafes. It's such a great place to just sit outside, enjoy a nice, either glass of wine in the afternoon with lunch, drink some coffee, and just do a little bit of people watching before we set off to Borgo Maggiano, which is a remarkable bridge when it comes to the architecture. And according to legend, it's called the Bridge of the Devil, essentially, because the engineer had to have had help from the actual devil to complete such an iconic piece and work of art. If you look at the reflections on the water, especially on a still day, you see those iconic arches, dead giveaway that something is Roman. But the reflection off of the bridge form these really unique, perfect circles when you get the reflection off of the water paired up with the arches. And we also will stop at the Gothic line. So for any war history buffs in the room, this is more of a little bit more of a somber stop, but a very meaningful stop. We'll learn all about the Gothic line, how it was built by the Germans. It was used as one of the last lines of defense during World War II. Also have a chance to see some of the different bunkers and fortifications. And we do have a museum visit today as well. We're going to be visiting the Museum of Liberation. So a little peek into war history, how it kind of affected the country, the surrounding area, before we make our way to a Tuscan winery. We're in Tuscany. Tuscany is known as having some of the best wine, not just in Italy, but arguably in the entire world. So we want to test that theory out for ourselves. So we'll have a chance to visit a local Tuscan winery, learn from the experts. I'm certainly no sommelier. I can basically smell some. Oh yeah, I can tell that's a white. I got hints of what is that, grapes in there? Yeah, I got a real nose for it. So you'll get to learn a little bit about what life is like running a traditional Tuscan winery, some of the different techniques that they use for their wines, and then of course have a chance to sample some of the finished product. And you can also ship some back from the winery as well if you're looking at bringing home some as souvenirs. You don't want to risk the bottles of red in the suitcase. Fingers crossed that it doesn't break. I mean, broken bottle of red wine in the suitcase wouldn't ruin anything. The only thing worse that you could spill in the suitcase actually is olive oil. Yeah, you're not getting that out. You might as well throw everything away in the suitcase if you do spill any olive oil. But great place to, and they do sell olive oil here at the winery as well. So good place to start when it comes to souvenirs. I find if you buy a bottle this early in the trip and you're planning on bringing it back with you, it's probably not making it back by the end of the trip. Let's be honest. So next up is a tour to arguably my favorite city that Italy has to offer, which is Florence. It's considered to be the cradle of the Italian Renaissance. I absolutely love Florence. It truly does have something for everyone, from amazing museums. You've got great leather goods, fantastic food scene, tons and tons of history, amazing architecture. One of those museums that we feel like is a must whenever you're visiting Florence is the Academy Gallery. So we've got included tickets to the Academy Gallery. We kind of have fast passes, so to speak, whenever we visit these different museums. So, if we've been to Disney, we all know what the fast passes are. You skip through to the front of the line, give everyone a little wave, and then, high five when you get out and they're still waiting 2 more hours in line. So we're making better use of our time in the destination. And we have a chance to see one of Michelangelo's most iconic pieces, which is the statue of David. And so, he took David essentially from the Bible, and we, all heard the story, David versus Goliath. David was this little small, timid guy, and Goliath was this giant monster. I think Michelangelo had a little bit of a different idea of how David was actually supposed to be portrayed, because he stands at 17 feet tall in person. So he's almost more of Goliath. This gives you an idea of kind of the scale. You know, you see the people at the bottom, they almost look like ants. And whenever you get up close to David and you see the facial features, the expression, the detail in his hair, I mean, it's just, mind-boggling to think of, how did somebody sculpt this to such, great detail. And I also thought it was interesting that the slab of marble that David was actually carved out of was thrown away by a local artist. They thought it was trash, so to speak, that, it's unusable. Well, Michelangelo took this slab of marble and created what's the masterpiece that we know as the statue of David today. So our tour is also going to highlight the Piazza del Duomo. It's the religious center in medieval Florence. And the Duomo was something that when I first saw, it just absolutely takes your breath away. I mean, it's so hard to describe the sheer size, the magnitude of it. It's known for its domed roof that you see behind me. Took them 17 years alone just to complete that dome. And this gives you a better idea of, just a small little church that stands out in the heart of the city. I can honestly say this was the first time that I truly had my breath actually taken away when I saw something, because you're walking through, the leather markets. This is our first day in Florence. You're going through the leather markets, and all of a sudden, we get to the city center square and everything just opens up and you just see this absolutely massive, massive church. It's so hard to even put it into words. And it was just like, you're standing there in awe. Now you see there is a tower right here and also the dome. If anyone is feeling up to a hike, you can actually climb up into either that tower or up into the dome. If you have an issue with heights, just don't look down. It doesn't seem that high when you're up there. I will make a recommendation. I think that climbing the tower on the left-hand side is actually the better thing to do if you're going to sacrifice, kind of a day of, or about a half an hour of fitness getting up and down the stairs, because you get an amazing shot of the dome of the Duomo, and it offers some unbelievable photo opportunities of the rest of the city. So the tour will also take you to the iconic Ponte Vecchio Bridge. This is where a lot of the heart of the action takes place. This also bridges the gap between more of like the local section of Florence and the touristy section. I mentioned those leather markets. Have a chance. Are there any shoppers in here? Okay, room full of liars, one honest person. That's okay. For the shoppers in the room, if you're in the market for something leather, there's no better place than Florence. I mean, they have very high quality handmade leather goods, and you can find anything from belts, wallets, handbags, purses, jackets, pants, you name it. I did actually pick up a leather jacket last time I was there. I call it my Europe jacket because I never wear it here in the States. I don't ride a Harley or anything like that. But, after a couple of glasses of wine, or maybe it was a bottle, I can't really remember. It was like, oh, you put it on, you're like, I'm feeling myself right now. I think it's gotten about 2 wears out of it. I wear it to Italy and that's about it. But it's a fun conversation piece. So the rest of your day is going to be free in Florence. The next day, we've got what we call choice on tour. So you've got the choice to either do this or to do that. So maybe you want to experience Montecatini Terme in a little bit more detail. You want to just stick around your hotel and resort. You've got the choice to do a morning tour of Montecatini, or if you don't mind giving up a little bit more free time, we do have the Siena walking tour. So our tour will take us to the medieval streets, Gothic streets of Siena, get to know kind of the local lifestyle as we visit a contrada, which is a local neighborhood, if you will. And Siena is separated into 17 different contradas. It's most known, does anyone know what Siena is most known for? It's kind of the hot topic right now after we just got back or done with a couple of horse races. Has anyone ever heard of the Palio before? So basically what the paleo is, and they do this every single year in the main city center square of Siena. This is something that I'd love to go to. I've seen videos of it and it's crazy. They actually shut down, and keep in mind, this main square that you're seeing here, normally it's all cobblestone streets. So they build a makeshift horse track right in the middle of the downtown area of Siena. And yes, these are all people in there. That's the bullpen section. And they will ride in a very traditional style on bareback and horses. And those contradas that I mentioned, the 17 different contradas, 10 contradas have a horse every year. So it'll be the 7 from the previous year that didn't get to participate and the top 3 horses that finished the year before. Those contradas will be granted a horse in the spot of the paleo. And it's a huge deal. I mean, it's like, Steelers Browns rivalry on steroids with 17 different contradas. And there's no higher honor basically for the riders than to win the paleo. If you're a losing rider, you usually want to hightail it off of the track very quickly because these people, they're passionate and they take it so seriously. So you'll learn a little bit more about the paleo. We also have a trip. We can't go to Tuscany and not visit Pisa. Have a chance to see the iconic Leaning Tower. Everything is situated where all the heart of the action is the Field of Miracles. So you'll have a chance to see the baptistry, the Campanelli, which is the bell tower, commonly referred to, of course, as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So they started construction of this tower all the way back in the late 1100s. Took them 200 years to complete. And it actually is built originally on marshy land. So that's why it was sinking. They thought eventually, all right, Leaning Tower is just going to completely tip over, topple over. And they did stabilize it in the 20th century, but it's still, according to them, not 100% stabilized. Luckily, we've got plenty of tourists that are here to help hold up our Leaning Tower of Pisa. And if you're looking for creative picture ideas, I thought that this one was pretty solid and takes the cake. She's got her ice cream cone, maybe the gelato, but instead of the gelato, she's got the Leaning Tower. We also tour and visit the baptistry. Everyone always thinks Pisa, it's all about the Leaning Tower, but they also have a beautiful, iconic baptistry. It's the largest in all of Italy. It's very well known for its Gothic architecture, its amazing acoustics on the inside, and the building itself is actually slightly taller than the Leaning Tower. So this evening, we're going to travel the quaint countryside, get truly into the heart of Tuscany. And for the foodies in the room, those of you that like to cook, or if you're me, you attempt to cook and just try not to burn the house down in the process, we do have a cooking class in store for you. So you'll actually have a chance to meet up with an Italian chef, and they're going to help us prepare a meal, basically from start to finish. They're going to teach us the different techniques. So when I was over there, what we did was homemade pasta. I'm not talking about they have the different homemade pasta makers that churn the bread and everything. Everything is all done by hand. It's super authentic. So, and I have so much respect for those Italian chefs after just trying to make handmade pasta for about 5 minutes, because, we were sitting there and we had this little Italian lady. She didn't speak a ton of English, but enough to communicate what she was doing, the recipe. And, she's sitting there kneading the dough and everything. And then she starts cutting off little slivers, tosses over there, and we start hand rolling each individual noodles. And if you want a good forearm workout, make handmade pasta for about 10 minutes and your forearms will be on fire. I could tell that it was our finished product, because you do get to have the finished product at the end of the day, because I'm looking at the noodles and it's just so janky. I'm like, oh yeah, that was my noodle that I handmade right there. And it's one of those experiences that you come back and you talk about, and you're like, not only did I learn how to make whatever dish they decide to teach you, I also did it myself, and they cooked it up, and it was an amazing meal. So for those of you especially that are into the culinary scene, a neat experience to go through an actual Italian cooking class. So the next day is going to be our free day. This is the day to recharge the batteries if you need to, get away from the group, do your own thing. Maybe you want to take advantage of some of the free time. For those of you that don't mind giving up a little bit of leisure time, we do have an option to go to Cinque Terre. This is the only optional tour that we have on this trip. So you don't get there and feel like, oh, I've basically bought a shell and now I have to pay all this money to add this tour, to add this tour, to add this tour. If you don't mind giving up some free time, the option to Cinque Terre is one that I highly recommend. It's almost like you take a step into like a fairy tale book. You always see the pictures of, you know, the iconic pastel colored houses built, you know, right along the mountainsides overlooking those crystal clear blue waters. Cinque Terre is the little seaside town that you usually see in those postcards. And Cinque Terre literally means 5 lands because it's 5 different villages. And they're really only accessible by either railway or by boat. So due to inclement weather at the end of the year, it's less predictable. We don't travel to Cinque Terre by boat, but we do it by train. And it's an entire day option. It's about 8 hours, costs $140. And again, it's not taking the place of any touring or sightseeing. This is just adding on to your experience. Is there any seafood fans in the room? Anyone like there's okay, there we go. I'll put my hand up for seafood. You know, these very much were fishing villages and still are to this day. So for the fans of seafood, during the lunch today, no better spot than to grab some, you know, good, authentic, you know, local. Most of the stuff is fresh caught that day. You know, it's hard to get any fresher than that. And just sit outside and take in the surrounding area. We also have a tasting. So we'll do kind of a sample as you go, a tasting menu of different local foods, you know, paired with local wines from the region, and just sit there and enjoy the sunset as the day comes to an end. Cinque Terre is known as having some of the best sunsets as well. So it truly is an amazing day. Now we've talked about, you know, pasta, we've talked about our wines, mentioned gelato a little bit. We got to talk about cheeses for the cheese fans in the room. So the next morning, however you choose to spend the previous day, we're going to make our way to a cheese farm and learn how the famous Pecorino cheese is made before having a chance to sample some of the finished product for yourself. And it's very delicious, made from sheep's milk. It's renowned as, you know, some of the best cheese in the area compared to like Parmigiano. You'll find what meats pair well with what different cheeses, what types of bread go with what. It'll fill you up for the trip to San Gimignano, which is, I mean, San Gimignano just screams Tuscany, in my opinion. It's this hilltop village overlooking the surrounding area. On a clear day, you can see for, you know, almost 100 miles essentially in the distance. And it's very much what you would think of whenever it comes to when you're picturing Tuscany. This gives you an idea of different perspective from inside San Gimignano and the surrounding area. Now, I know I'm putting you all on the spot a little bit. Does anyone know what San Gimignano is actually known for? We got to think sweets. Marzipan. Gelato. Yes. Depending on who you talk to, this is San Gimignano is one of the birthplaces of gelato. So if you're planning on, okay, you know, I'm on the diet, but I gave myself one day to sample out some of the gelato, San Gimignano is where I would recommend having some of that delicious treat. And trust me, there's no sugar, there's no calories, carbs in any of it. So, you know, get 2-3 scoops. San Gimignano is known and world renowned for having some of the best gelato, to the degree of Gelateria Dondoli won best gelato. They were world champions multiple different years. Did have a chance to sample some of the gelato here, and it did not disappoint. So if you're looking for a recommendation, this would be it right here. world champions when it comes to gelato. I feel like that's putting the bar pretty darn high. You think of all the different countries that you see gelato, all the bright colored displays. You'll see it on just about every street corner in Italy. So for a place to win best in the world, that seems to be really saying something. So our tour guide will take you all throughout this, enchanting medieval town, see the iconic 14 towers that scatter throughout the city. You'll see magnificent vistas overlooking the vineyards of Tuscany. For the shoppers in the room, it's also a great place to do some last minute shopping before we wrap everything up on the back end with a fantastic farewell dinner. Again, very traditional regional cuisines paired with local wines. It's a great way to wrap everything up and end the trip on a good note. And just so you know, whenever you see at the end of each day, there'll be a B or a B, D in the itinerary. That's going to be breakfast or breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And anywhere that you see a meal in the itinerary, tips are already included for those meals as well. So any meal included in the tour, you do not have to worry about tipping. The options, whenever it comes to the meals, I always like to say it's, 4 legs, 2 legs, no legs. So some sort of meat dish, a chicken, and then a pasta vegetarian option. If there's any dietary restrictions, just let the tour manager know. If you need a gluten-free menu, we can accommodate that, no problem. And then unfortunately, as much as everyone probably fell in love with Tuscany, with Italy, we do have to bring you back. It is company policy, but maybe you wanted to stay a little bit longer. Maybe you wanted to start the trip off a little bit earlier from the rest of the group. We do have a pre-tour stay in Rome. It's going to be 5 days, 3 nights, 4-hour drive to Montecatini Terme. And it is fully guided. So there's 2 different extensions. The one on the back end is going to be hosted. So whenever I say hosted, that means you have to be comfortable with a little bit more independent exploration. You'll still have a host. There'll still be Colette presence there, but you won't have the full-time tour manager that's actually with you. Now in Rome, you very much will. So some of the inclusions that we have when it comes to Rome, of course, a fantastic, what would be welcome dinner, since we are starting the trip off early, and then a locally guided tour of classical Rome. So we'll have a chance to see Aventine and Palatine Hills, ancient Circus Maximus, the Arch of Constantine, and then most tour groups, they'll stop at the Colosseum. The guide will provide a little bit of, commentary, you take your picture, and then you keep it moving. With us, how we differentiate ourselves is we actually offer a full in-depth tour of the Colosseum. So we actually get inside. It's a couple-hour tour. You get to see the inside of the Colosseum, hear the stories of, the gladiators, the battles that took place over the years. And then you've got the remainder of the afternoon at leisure. On the free morning/day when we're in Rome, we do have the option, and I'm working with our team to confirm what the price is for the optional tour. It hasn't been solidified just yet at this point in time, but we do have an optional tour if you'd like to do the Vatican. In my opinion, even if you're not a real religious person, I almost think that the Vatican is a must, especially for the first time to Rome. Have a chance to see the different Vatican museums, St. Peter's Basilica, world-renowned Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo's mural of the Last Judgment, you name it. And this is the last day in Rome. So you've got a little bit of free time before we make our way to Montecatini Terme. Now the cost is $10.99. If you are interested in doing the extension, that's $10.99 for a double. If you want to stay a little bit later and do a post tour, we've got the Gourmet Bologna tour. So this is very much, if you're a foodie, you want to try as much as possible, this is a post tour that I would definitely recommend. It's 2 nights, 3 days, so not super long amount of time. You're adding a couple days essentially onto the tour. And like I mentioned, this portion of it is hosted. So you will have a little bit of touring and sightseeing when we visit a local farm. Again, learning a little bit more about these Parmigiano cheeses. Have a chance at a different villa that we're going to stop at where it's a family-run villa, and essentially they produce their own balsamic vinegar, and they have been producing it, aging it actually in the attic of the villa. So it is a very localized experience. We try and whenever, especially when it comes to the different foodie things that we do, we try and keep it as authentic as possible and not so, dressed up and commercialized, that sort of thing, where you come back and you're like, okay, that was pretty cool. One recent experience that I can liken it to was when we did the paella experience in Valencia. Our motor coach took us, I mean, we were off the beaten path. We literally pulled into this family's driveway. Like, we have the right spot? Do they know we're here? Like, do we have to worry about like a dog coming out to get us? Like, we walk off of the motor coach into the backyard, to this guy's shed, and he's essentially been preparing this huge skillet of paella since the crack of dawn. And so it was a family that welcomed us into their house, it was essentially home cooked meal. They had fresh bread that they had made that morning, homemade sangria, and it was just one of those amazing, amazing experiences. And so those are the kind of experiences that we like to do whenever it comes to the different food tours. Of course, have a chance to experience with a local guide the city of Bologna. We'll learn all about the different history, their unique nicknames. So they've got a couple of different ones. One is La Doda, which is the learned, La Rosa, which is the red, which you'll get from the red colored bricks that surround the city, and La Grassa, which translates to the fat. And I think the latter is probably the most fitting nickname because food in Bologna is truly, truly a passion of the city. There's tons of different foods that have come from Bologna. To name a couple, you've got tortellini, the tortellini style noodles. It was the original location of Bologna. So Bologna, pretty easy to put those two together. And also bolognese sauce, the nice, marinara combined with, that meat, and the bolognese sauce is just unbelievable in Italy. Pesto, unbelievable for the pasta fans, really. I mean, you can't go wrong, but Bologna is one of the crown jewels for sure. So we'll also have a chance to see the ancient seat of the university, which is the oldest continuously operating university of its kind in the Western world. We're also going to browse Bologna's different specialty food shops. So a very nice cultural immersion opportunity, and then combine it with a little bit of free time as well. If you are interested in doing the post-tour extension, it's $8.99 for land and air inclusive. So you would just take that $8.99 and tack it on to what the original rate is, which I will talk about here on the next slide. And I know that one of the worst parts about travel is the act of actually traveling, especially nowadays. It's just kind of the way the travel industry is nowadays. You just kind of roll with the punches. But to make things a little bit easier on you folks, especially at the start of the trip and at the end, one thing that we do is a hometown pickup. So we'll actually come out, we'll pick everyone up at one location locally and take you to and from the Columbus airport, which is the gateway that we're using for this tour. It's nice, especially on the back end. And a trip like this, I'm not as familiar with what parking is running at Columbus airport. I know Cleveland Hopkins, they got a pretty good racket going. It's up to like $20, $22, depending on where you're parking on site. Even if you're parking off site, $14 to $15 per day. And on, a 9-10 day trip, that's an expense that really starts adding up and isn't something that you think about until you incur it on the back end. And plus, coming back, the last thing that I ever want to do is hop into my car, especially after, longer travel day. I'm jet lagged, and then drive an hour back to Mansfield. So I want everyone to know exactly what the price is, what's included, what exactly is my money getting me on this trip. So the price for a double occupancy, 2 people sharing a room, is $31.99. If you are going solo, this tour is extremely single friendly. It's an additional $300 for the single supplement. Triples, are on a first come, first served basis, as well as singles. Triple is $31.69. But what exactly is included in that price? So that price includes your land. When I say land, that means your hotel accommodations, meals that you see in the itinerary, tips for those included meals, all of your touring and sightseeing, any admission charges, all of your motor coach transportation while you're in the destination, your full-time tour manager. You'll have some local step-on guides from time to time just to provide a different perspective. Air and tax is in there as well. So air is included in that price from Columbus. For those of you that are on the call from New York, the price out of Rochester is the same as the price from Columbus. The hometown pickup is included in there. The only thing that really is not included in the price of the tour up front are tips for the tour manager and for the motor coach driver. That's pretty standard. We don't pass around a hat or anything like that on a daily basis. It's just kind of, tipping is on your honor. What I'll usually do is wait until the last day of the tour. When I know it's time to say goodbye to everyone, I'll hand the tour manager an envelope with the tip in it, motor coach driver an envelope with the tip in it, and away I go. For anyone that is interested in getting signed up, it's a $698 deposit, plus insurance is due at the time of deposit. It's $449. Nice part about both of those is they're actually still fully refundable up until May 30th. So it's not like, oh, I got deposit, I put my insurance money down, and all of a sudden, I know that I'm completely locked in. You do have up until May 30th. Something happens, which, in the next week, we understand things come up. You can cancel off. You can get your deposit money back. You can get your insurance money back. No questions asked. Once that May 30th date hits, that's when your travel insurance starts kicking in and actually working for you. And we do have two different travel insurance options, partnering with AAA. They use a fantastic insurance company called Allianz. We have our own insurance as well if you prefer to go with us. How our insurance works is it allows our guests to cancel for absolutely any reason, all the way up until 24 hours prior to departure. We call it the bad hair day policy. It's, back in the day when I could have bad hair days, it didn't matter. I don't need a doctor's note, medical excuse, family emergency. It does not matter. You can truly cancel for any reason up until the day before and get 100% of your money back minus that $449 for the trip insurance premium. And it does cover you while you're on tour. So it covers medical, lost baggage, trip delay, trip interruption, theft, you name it. We make sure that our travel insurance has all the stops in place. And I do want to mention that if something does happen, we know that you're not canceling because of a bad hair day. It's typically for a covered reason, but if something does happen, you have to cancel with us. You're not getting a voucher, future travel credit that might expire. You have to use in a certain amount of time. It's a full cash refund, money back into your pockets. I'm not a big toot our own horn guy, but I will say over the course of the pandemic, when a lot of other folks were getting stuck with these travel vouchers that maybe they couldn't use or didn't want to use at the time, we ended up refunding over $185 million back into our clients' pockets. Obviously, it was a big hit, but we were one of the only travel companies in the industry that had that kind of refund policy. So, and that's just what we're about. We wouldn't be around 105 plus years if that wasn't the stance that we took. And we said, hey, we don't feel right keeping Peter's money to pay Paul, especially if you haven't had a chance to experience our tour. So that's just the kind of company that we are, that you're traveling with. We do have a loyalty program for those of you that have traveled with us before. Think of when your previous trip was, and it doesn't even have to be a trip with the chamber. If you've done a Colette/member choice tour before in the past, think of when that trip was. If this trip falls within 12 months of that previous tour, you do get an extra $150 off per person. If it falls within 2 years, you get an extra $100 off per person. So just a way of us saying thank you for your loyal travels over the years. And then I'm going to keep this slide up here. This is your group webpage. So you can book and sign up online through the group webpage if you'd like to. But this is more than just an avenue to get booked and signed up for the trip. This is kind of a one-stop shop because it has a lot of great know before you go information. So like clothing and packing tips, what the weather is going to be like, information on local currency. So it is a very useful resource to have. And if you don't want to take a picture of the screen up there, can't see the smaller writing. This web link is also when you open up our little lovely flyer here on the bottom right-hand side. At the bottom, there's going to be a blue banner. Very last line in that blue banner is going to be the trip web link as well. Any questions on anything? I know it's a lot of information, but does anyone have any questions?
What airline do you use?
We only use Spirit, Frontier, and Southwest, all the reputable ones. No, I'm just kidding. We out of Columbus, we'll use United, American, and Delta. Just we shop schedules, we get contracted airfare. So once we actually have people booked, sign up, we know how many people are going to be traveling with the group. Then we can go to our specific airline partners and shop schedules, see what the best schedule is available based on the rate that we advertised it. Don't expect a direct flight. It's going to be just like Cleveland. You know, I know if I'm going over to Europe, going to be stopping over somewhere, typically on the East Coast. And then the goal is direct flight after that. Although Aer Lingus is coming on with Cleveland, I believe actually that just happened a couple of weeks ago, doing direct flights to Dublin. Yeah, which we're excited about. But
Did you go in and out of Florence airwise, or are you coming into Rome and then?
we're in and out of Florence. It's going to be the closest gateway. So it's smaller airport than Rome. So if there is a double connection, it's just kind of the nature of getting to where this tour takes place.
Florence isn't too bad because that's where we flew out
Is it?
last year.
Yeah, a little bit smaller than Rome, less of a zoo. Yeah.
When we went, we out of Florence, gone, but then we said they canceled the air flights because they were going through Amsterdam.
Well, that was nice of them to cancel the flights.
Well, that was-
I've never heard of an
The
airline
only thing
doing it.
is I got to spend 3 extra days in Neva when I was there.
I can think of worse things if you didn't have to be back for anything.
But then we went through Paris.
Okay, yeah,
Instead of
Charles de Gaulle
Amsterdam
is
because They were having some kind of problems.
Oh yeah, that's just kind of the way the travel industry is
Yeah.
nowadays. You just kind of roll with the punches, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, you quickly forget about any flight delays or flight changes once you get to actually experience the destination. Any other questions on anything? Yeah.
So you pay for your experience, then you go and then you expect to like shop or go to dinner or go to lunches. So for budgeting purposes, how much would you recommend that like we would expect to spend on like the other extra stuff?
That's a loaded question. Some people have expensive tastes, others like to ball on a budget. I would say with this tour, just off the top of my head, I mean, you've got dinner included day 2, 3 is essentially dinner, day 4 is dinner, day 5 dinner. I'd say if you eliminate all the extra shopping and everything, maybe $200-300 per person. Again, that could be lower, that could be higher. They still got the Mickey D's Golden Arches there. You can buy fast food if you're going to Tuscany or you're eating Mickey D's. Please don't do that to me. Credit card is very widely accepted. I always like to have, handful of euros. I might take out 150 US dollars worth of euros. And then if I need more, I can always get more. But credit cards are extremely widely accepted. The only place that really you might have trouble using a credit card, definitely in like the leather markets, the open air markets, some of the smaller vendors, but otherwise, you can use credit cards.
And when it gets closer and we get our documents, you can order foreign currency, they're AAA, so.
I mean, I would say on a trip of this length, I would probably think maybe 400 to 600.
Ooh, keep shopping.
Depending on how.
Yeah.
Like, lot of souvenirs for people. If you don't, you can cut down. And if you're, like, if you're gonna split.
I took shopping out of it.
A leather, you know, like, oh, but, I mean, that.
I'll send you guys pictures. My leather coats started at 900. I talked them down, I got them down to 200 because my buddy, it was a 2-for-1, it was a 2-for-1 special. Yeah.
That's good.
I took 300 euros with me and then used my credit card.
Yeah.
Both when I went there and England, they were. And that worked fine, and I used those euros basically for the tips.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At the end, it's a good way to get rid of the euros, especially if,
And I just used that and gave it to them.
and they appreciate that because it's one less step that they have to go
Yeah,
through to
They would
exchange
take
currency.
American money, but
They prefer the
rather-
local.
they'd
Yeah.
rather have the
They
euro.
prefer euros for sure.
I do recommend putting your tips aside at the beginning. As someone who maybe had visited ATM before. Out, so, yeah.
And usually the guides when I've been, they've recommended the better ATMs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When we were in Spain, I went up to the ATM and the tour manager literally tapped me on the shoulder. Was like, hey, I would not use that ATM. Apparently that bank that the ATM was associated with charges insanely high transaction fees. So pointed me in the right direction. It's like those little differences, you know, you can study up as much as you want.